Okay, so today we're going to do a deep dive into the Steven Avery case.
Oh, yeah. This is a fascinating one.
It really is. A lot of people probably know about him from Making a Murderer.
A Netflix documentary.
Except that's the one. But is Avery a cunning manipulator or a victim?
That's the question, isn't it?
It really is. So Avery was wrongfully convicted of sexual assault in 1985
And spent 18 years in prison.
before DNA evidence proved he was innocent
And that's really a key part of this whole story, that wrongful conviction,
because it led to a huge lawsuit against Manitowoc County.
which created a lot of bad blood between Avery and the police.
And then 2 years after he was exonerated while that lawsuit's going on,
He was arrested again,
this time for murder.
the murder of Teresa Halbach.
Right. And she was last seen at Avery's salvage yard.
And Making a Murderer suggested that the police might have framed him because of that lawsuit.
So that's what we're going to look at today. We'll go through the evidence and the arguments from both sides.
And see if we can sort it all out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with Avery's early life.
Okay.
He grew up in Manitowoc County, kind of a tough childhood, low-income family, and his IQ was around 70.
Okay.
And he dropped out of school in 10th grade and had some trouble with the law before. Burglary and animal cruelty.
And the prosecution used that in the murder trial to make him look bad, like he was...
Prone to crime.
Exactly. They were saying, look at his history.
Yeah. But is that fair, or were they just trying to prejudice the jury?
That's a good question.
Yeah. It makes you think, how much should our past define us?
Right.
Okay, so let's go back to 1985 and that wrongful conviction.
Okay.
The victim, Penny Burnson, she was positive. Avery was the one who attacked her. She picked him out of a lineup.
And her testimony was a big reason he was convicted.
Yeah, and this is a classic example of how eyewitness testimony can be so powerful, but also so wrong.
Absolutely.
Avery had people who could back up his alibi, but they didn't believe him.
It wasn't until years later, almost 20 years later, that they found out the real attacker was a guy named Gregory Allen.
And they figured that out through DNA testing.
Right.
Wow. It's scary to think about that our memories aren't always accurate.
And it really makes you think about perception versus reality.
Yeah, which is a big theme in Avery's story.
It really is.
Okay, so now let's fast forward to 2005.
Okay.
Teresa Halbach disappears on Halloween
Right.
after she met with Avery at his salvage yard.
She was there to take pictures of a minivan for a magazine,
And they found her car a few days later.
partially hidden on Avery's property.
Yeah, which obviously made everyone suspicious.
Of course.
And that led to his arrest and eventually his conviction for Halbach's murder.
But was it really that simple?
That's what we're trying to figure out, right?
Exactly.
So there was a lot of evidence against Avery. I mean, a fired .22 caliber bullet with Halbach's DNA on it was found in his garage.
And they found a .22 rifle that matched the bullet in his house,
And the key to Halbach's RV4 was found in his bedroom.
with Avery's DNA on it.
And then they found his blood in Halbach's car.
It seems pretty damning right.
You would think so, yeah. But that's when Making a Murderer comes in and raises all these questions about whether the police...
Planted evidence.
Exactly. Maybe they framed him.
Because of that lawsuit, remember?
They wanted to make sure he wouldn't win.
Okay.
Let's look at some of the specific evidence they questioned. So first, there's that .22 bullet.
Okay.
It wasn't found until a few days after they started searching. So some people think the police could have put it there later.
I see.
And then there's the rifle.
Yeah.
It was just hanging on the wall in Avery's house, but they didn't take it when they first searched the place.
So was it really connected to the crime?
Right. If it was so obvious, why didn't they take it right away?
Good point.
And then there's that RV4 key.
Oh, yeah.
They found it in Avery's bedroom.
After they'd already searched the room twice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you miss something like that?
It's hard to believe, right?
Makes you wonder if they planted it there.
To make him look guilty.
Exactly. And then there's the blood they found in Halbach's car. Yeah. The defense said the police could have planted that too.
Using a sample from his old case.
Yeah, remember that sexual assault case?
Right. They had a vial of his blood from back then.
And the seal on that box of evidence had been broken.
And there was a needle mark in the vial.
So it looked really suspicious.
Like someone had tampered with it.
Right, and it fits with the whole idea that they were trying to frame Avery.
But the prosecution had an answer for that, didn't they? Yeah, they said they had this new test.
Right.
It was developed by the FBI.
For Avery's trial?
Yeah, specifically for this trial.
Wow.
And this test could tell if the blood had EDTA in it.
Which is a preservative they use in blood samples that are stored.
Right.
So they tested the blood from Halbach's car.
Yeah.
No EDTA.
Hmm.
which means it probably didn't come from that vial they had in storage.
So the prosecution said that proves the defense was wrong about the blood being planted.
So that kind of hurts the defense's argument, right?
It does seem to contradict their claim.
But what about the break and seal on the vial?
That's still a bit of a mystery.
It is. Okay, so let's talk about Brendan Dassey.
Avery's nephew.
Yeah, he was 16 at the time, and he confessed to helping Avery with the murder.
But then he said he was forced to confess.
Right. He said the investigators coerced him,
Yeah, and Dassey had a low IQ.
which makes things even more complicated.
It really does.
Was he easily manipulated, or was his confession real?
Tough question.
Yeah. I mean, they interrogated him over and over without a lawyer or his parents there.
And if you watch those tapes, it seems like they were putting a lot of pressure on him.
Right. A lot of people think they manipulated him into confessing.
But the prosecution used his confession against Avery.
Yeah, it was a big part of their case.
But the whole thing is really controversial.
It is. And then in 2016, they overturned Dassey's conviction.
But a higher court reinstated it later.
It's like this case just keeps going back and forth.
So many twists and turns.
Okay, so remember those bone fragments?
From the fire pit on Avery's property.
Right, they said those were Halbach's bones.
Which was bad news for Avery.
Yeah. But then Avery's new lawyer, Kathleen Zellner,
She's a good one.
she came up with a new theory about those bones.
What's that?
She found this ledger sheet that the original defense team never saw.
What was on it?
It said those bones weren't actually found in the fire pit.
Wait, seriously?
They were found somewhere else entirely.
Wow, that changes things.
It really does.
So where were they found?
That's the thing. We don't know.
They didn't say.
Nope. And they gave the bones back to Halbach's family.
So Zellner couldn't test them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she thinks they did that on purpose.
To hide evidence that could help Avery.
Yeah. She thinks they were trying to keep him in prison.
Man, this whole thing is a mess.
It really is. So much evidence that seems like it could have been tampered with.
The confession that might have been coerced.
And now this new information about the bones.
But hard to know what to think.
It really is.
Yeah.
So back to our question. Visionary or con artist?
Did Avery fool everyone not just once but twice?
Or was he set up?
Targeted by a system that wanted to punish him.
Avery says he's innocent.
Even though he hasn't seen the
And
documentary.
he's thanked people for supporting him.
And making a murderer really got people talking about this case.
And a lot of people believe he's innocent.
It's amazing how a story can change people's minds.
It really is. But there's always more than one side to every story.
That's for sure.
So we've talked about the evidence and the arguments and how the public sees Steven Avery.
But who is Steven Avery, really?
Yeah, like as a person.
It's important to remember where he came from, his background.
Right, he grew up in rural Wisconsin. His family didn't have a lot of money.
Limited opportunities.
Yeah, and he had a tough childhood.
And that low IQ.
Right, which probably played a part in those early run-ins with the law.
And those convictions, they used that against him in the murder trial.
Like to make him look bad.
Exactly. It makes you think about our justice system. Should we always be judged by our past?
Yeah, our second chance is real.
It's complicated.
It is, especially in Avery's case.
Think about it, 18 years in prison for something you didn't do.
And then suddenly you're free.
Everyone knows your name.
You're a symbol of what's wrong with the system.
That's going to be a lot to deal with.
And then right when you're trying to put your life back together.
You're accused of another crime.
Awful.
All that pressure, all those eyes on you.
How could that not mess with you?
Yeah. Did it change him?
Did it make him do something he wouldn't have done otherwise?
We can't forget about that lawsuit either.
The one against Manitowoc County?
$36 million. That's a lot of money.
So what if they didn't like him?
There was a lot of tension there.
So did that affect how they investigated Halbach's murder?
Were they out to get him?
Or were they just trying to find justice for Teresa Halbach?
It's hard to know.
It really is. So what do you think, visionary or con artist?
I don't know. It's tough.
Is Avery a master manipulator?
Did he fool us all?
Or is he a victim of a system that's rigged against him?
There's evidence that supports both sides.
We've got those questions about the evidence.
The broken seal, the missing bones.
Dassey's confession.
But we also have evidence that points to Avery.
His blood in the car.
The bullet.
And making a murderer definitely had an impact.
It made people question everything.
But it's just one perspective.
There's always more to the story.
That's so true. I think the biggest thing we can learn from all of this is to think for ourselves.
Don't just believe what you see on TV or in a documentary.
Do your own research, look at all sides.
Be open to the possibility that you might be wrong.
The Steven Avery case shows us that truth isn't always easy to find.
And justice can be complicated.
This is a case that should make you think
Keep asking questions.
and never stop searching for answers.
It's a story about our justice system, about how we see the world, and about what it means to be human.
And it's a story that isn't over yet.